welcome back to you, and this is our third video about pensions, and we're here again with Yvonne Jenkins in her kitchen, and Yvonne is from pinkinvestments.org, and we're talking today about company pensions. If you're lucky enough to have a good one of those, let's find out about them.
Yeah, company pensions obviously affect an awful lot of people because whether you're in a company pension now or at some point in your career, you would have worked for a company and been participating in their company pension scheme. There's a lot of confusion surrounding this because it is an area where there does happen to be a lot of jargon used in the literature and stuff. And there are two main types, and people get very confused also there as to which type they are in. The first one is called a final salary scheme, but can also be referred to, just to confuse you more, as defined benefit scheme.
So final salary scheme or
defined benefit scheme.
And what sort of companies would have this one?
Yeah, that's one and the same thing, so it's the same thing. Big public employers, NHS, teachers, some of the big multinational companies. But having said that, in recent years, because they're quite expensive to run these type of schemes, a lot of the big multinationals have actually been morphing into the other type of pension, which is called a defined contribution scheme or money purchase. Again, very confusing, but again, they're one and the same thing, either money purchase or defined contributions. That is the same type of company scheme. So
if I have this sort of company scheme, if I've been working in one of these big organisations for years and years, what should I be doing? What should I be checking on?
Okay, well, that's a good question, because depending on which type you have got, there are various things you should or you don't need to be doing. So, for example, say you've got one of these final salary schemes, okay, there are things you can do, but you don't need to be quite as proactive, because what you will actually get out of that scheme is, as the name implies, a defined benefit. And what defines that benefit is how long you have actually worked for that company, so how many years of service, and then you will actually get a percentage of your final salary paid out to you, depending on how many years you and your employer have paid in. Now, your employer will be paying in X percentage, depending on the scheme, and as a rule of thumb, you probably will be paying yourself out of your salary roughly 5% of your salary. Okay. Now, if you're in the other type, there's money.
I just get that really clear. Yeah. So, if you're in a final salary or defined benefit scheme, now how would you know that for sure? Would it say that at some point?
It will say it somewhere. Every year you will get an annual statement come through, and somewhere on there it'll actually give you, state either defined benefits or final salary. So it'll be all that sort of terminology that they use.
So pretty much you don't need to do anything about that. It's just interesting to know that you will get what's promised, this percentage of your salary.
Well, there's a lot more certainty, if you like, surrounding those schemes, because you know pretty much what you're going to get out of it, and you're not exposed really to the vagaries of the stock markets going up and down as to what you'll get out of it.
And when would you start to get that?
When would you? Again, depending on the scheme rules. Some, for example, like the Metropolitan Police Force, they used to retire, I'm sure they still do, at quite early ages because of the nature of their job. Others, it would normally be around the same time as the state pension age, or age 60. So when it depends on the scheme rules.
Tell us about the other one, which is a more common one, right? The company pension that's more usual.
It's more common nowadays, certainly. A lot of, as I said, even a lot of big multinational companies now have switched over to the money purchase, or what they call the defined contribution scheme. Again, as the name implies, what you get out of these schemes at the end of the day will very much be determined by how much is put in on your behalf and what yourself puts in, and then the other thing which comes into play for these schemes is how much growth you actually get on the underlying investments.
So where does the growth come from?
Okay. Each scheme will actually have a menu of different funds that your money can be invested into. If you do nothing at all, you know, and you're just in the sort of default fund, if you like, it'll probably be what they call a managed or a balanced or a mixed fund. A lot of people are actually quite horrified to know that as a general rule, probably in a mixed fund or a managed fund like that, 40% or more of your money will actually be exposed to the stock market. So as you can imagine, you know, as you get closer to retirement, often that's not a really good situation to be in, because it could just be, you know, your bad luck that the year before you come to retire, there's a stock market crash and your fund could literally go down by 20, 30, 40%, you know.
Okay. So let's imagine I've know nothing about really what I'm in, but I'm in that sort of company pension. What was it called again?
Money purchase.
Money purchase. So I'm in the money purchase. I get these things that come once a year. I put them on the fridge. They fall behind the fridge. And then at some point I think, well, I don't understand them, so I'm just going to recycle the paper or something like that. So, okay, I've got one of those. What should I be doing now? What are my options now? Now I know what it is. What would be a helpful thing for me to do about this?
Well, and I think, you know, millions of us probably have done that at some point. You know, it's just gone in the too hard basket and we don't look at it. But really, we do need to bite the bullet. You need to actually look at what's been sent to you and find out what fund your money's actually invested into. Now, you can actually choose quite freely, and it won't cost you anything, to switch between these funds, you know. And obviously, there's horses for courses. At certain times, you might want to be in a stock market fund because the stock market is going up and up and up. But then other times, like now, for example, or during the global financial crisis, you know, there would have been a cash fund in there which you could easily switch into. And you can do that, you know, and it's not rocket science. You just need to be aware of it.
So I'd like to know from you what that list of options are, and also, is it really easy to change from one to the other?
It is. It's literally.
How would I do that?
It's just an administration thing, literally. You know, there's often a form included in your literature that you get from your scheme every year, a switch form, which literally you go through, you look at the menu of different funds that you've got there. Depending on how you feel, you might be somebody that really never wants to have any of her money actually invested in the stock market at all. So you will find a cash fund in there, in that menu of funds. You will also find something like a government bond fund, which is something which is, you know, a fixed interest fund, which is not as risky as stock market fund.
What's the cash one?
Well, a cash fund is literally just a money market fund. So there's a big pool of cash, if you like, and the scheme trustees, administrators actually have that invested in a higher paying interest because there's so much money in there, because it's a pooled fund from all these different investors. You would generally get a higher rate of return than you would.
So that's not very risky, is that what you're saying?
No, that's not risky at all.
Not risky at all, okay.
Having said that, I'll actually qualify that. It's not risky as far as you're actually going to lose your money. However, over a very long period of time, if you know you're getting, say, 4 or 5% return on that cash fund, and over a 20-year period, you know, inflation has gone up by more than that, actually the real buying power of your money is actually going down over that period of time. So you do need to look at some other funds to give it a bit of a booster in performance, if you like.
Let's list those choices again. So one is what a lot of people without awareness will have, about 40% on average in the stock market.
And your average mixed fund.
And you might want to choose some of that too. What else? So there's cash. How they keep it in cash. There was...
In a typical scheme, you know, money purchase scheme, you probably have a choice of up to 10 or 12 funds actually within it. So you can go into, you know, overseas funds. There might be a Southeast Asia fund. There might be a China fund. You know, there'll be a UK blue chip fund. There will be a mixed fund, a managed fund. So basically, if you're in a money purchase type scheme, which a lot of you will be nowadays, it really is to your benefit to at least start to grasp and learn something about just the fundamentals of investing. You don't need to know all the ins and outs and everything else.
Okay.
We have got a very good section in our ebook, our free ebook, which you can download, and it goes through what I like to call the risk pyramid, and it goes through all the different types of investing, so from cash through to government bonds, through to managed funds, property, etc. And so it really is to your benefit to just get some fundamental knowledge on those things, and also be aware of your own, how you deal with risk. And then you can really make some informed decisions about what type of fund you want your pension to be invested in.
Okay.
The women might want ethical funds. Some companies offer them, some companies don't. But really, you do have a number of choices that can quite easily be made. It's really not rocket science. You break through all this jargon, and there's lots of switches that you can facilitate yourself. You don't need to employ a financial advisor or anything to do that for you. It's not going to cost you anything either. You're not moving out of that scheme. You're just staying within the scheme, but switching the type of fund that your money's invested in.
So for the first thing for someone to do who works for a company is to know which of those two it is, whether it's that final salary or defined benefits, which is pretty set, and it's just interesting to know how that's going and what's happening with that.
You can also make additional voluntary contributions into that, and if you've got enough disposable income, I would certainly suggest you do that.
Okay, so that's one clear option if you're in that fund with that
final
company, final salary. So that's one of them, definitely. And the other one, if you're working for a company, is the
money purchase, defined contributions.
Defined contributions, money purchase, and that's where you've got that whole list of choices that you can find out at present, where your money is being invested, and then maybe make some changes and choices if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I would certainly say that as a real generalised rule of thumb, if you've got a final salary scheme, hold on to it, because they're like gold nowadays. Any new employees in the main will not even have a choice to go into a final salary scheme now. So if you've got one of those, hold on to it, it's like gold. If you are in a money purchase scheme, there's nothing bad with that either, but you do need to take some more personal responsibility and be more proactive in it yourself to really get the best out of that you can.
Okay. And we've got more information on the ebook. What's the ebook called?
There's a mini ebook just on pensions, or if you go into our main ebook, which really covers everything through pensions, investing, mortgages and everything else. There's a huge section in there with a lot of detail, about all of this stuff in much more detail. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. Thank you. See you at the next one.
Yes.